Last week we talked about organic food, sterility, and Mary Douglas's idea of dirt being matter out of place. Let's see what you had to say. So first things first, there were a lot of comments on last week's video arguing that the premise was flawed in some way, that arguably organic food actually has more dirt around it, and therefore is not an instance of our desire for sterility. And what I would counter-argue is that organic food, the dirt that is around it, is dirt that we sort of think of as being part and parcel with our food, that we think of it as being a quality or a kind of package deal, and therefore, by the definition of dirt that we were using in the video, that dirt is matter out of place, that it is something where it doesn't belong. That dirt, even though it is maybe actual literal dirt, isn't really dirt, because it doesn't have this sense of uncleanness, of dirtiness. And I think that was one of the things that I was trying to get at, that even though it might be in some sense more dirty, it is not out of place and therefore sterile. I don't know. That's what I was trying to say, I guess. Taylor Bennett wrote a really great comment that resulted in a long and awesome conversation, and I want to touch on one of the points that he makes, which is that there is the pretension of health that comes with organic food is a luxury, that it is a thing that you actually have to pay for. And this is a thing that we could have spent a lot more time talking about in the episode. You know, I gave the one statistic that the average American family who is attempting to eat organic is spending upwards of $4,000 extra a year, and so that should suggest, right, that to eat organic, one must have that extra income. And Nick Baron actually pointed out that where they live, there is a fair amount of people who are able to eat organic using their EBT cards, and that is great. That is not a thing that we see much in New York City, or at least I don't. And so there were a lot of comments and there were a lot of calls for the organic movement and organic farmers to figure out how to both package organic food and discuss the organic movement in a way that makes it clear that it is a luxury and really should not be one. Relatedly, John Kehoe talks about how the good feelings that come from eating organic have a lot to do with marketing. That, you know, you look at the green awnings, you look at the clean design, you look at all of the sprouting vegetables and fruits on all of the packages for organic food, and it makes you feel like you're doing something healthy. And relatedly, John Ohno talks about how signaling theory plays a lot into this. And I think that there is a huge place for the fact that when one is purchasing these organic foods and conspicuously consuming them, then yes, you are sending very strong messages that you are identifying as a certain group, a member of a particular group that either has a certain value system, or if you want to be really crass about it, can just afford nicer food. I think really though that it's not one of these things that describes the success or the growth of the organic movement, but really, yeah, all of them in conversation with one another. But yeah, these were great comments. Thank you for writing them. Bart Bols points out that we made a joke about genetically engineered animals and showed a very strange looking animal that, as it turns out, is just the effect of crossbreeding. So our apologies, that was incorrect. I do not believe that this cow is real, but I know I did, unlike when we made the episode, I did some research on it. It is scary. We're gonna put up a picture of it here just so that you can see the cow we're talking about. What? I'm done here. JBantha, ScientaEstVox, and Grant Celley all bring up a really good point that I wish we had spent more time on in the episode, which is that a lot of the ill will towards GMOs might have something to do with the uncertain nature of their effect on human health, but certainly a fair amount of it has lots to do with the public opinion of the companies involved with GMOs, that a lot of them seem to have less than toward business practices. A very strict and draconian copyright dealios, we will say. And I think that that's a really good point. That's maybe like a thing that Idea Channel should talk about in and of itself. Copywriting seeds. Or I guess patenting them. That's nuts. I did that on purpose. Erin Vogel brings up a relationship between the organic episode and the 99% invisible episode on white bread, which is one that I have managed to miss. But for anybody who doesn't listen to 99PI, you should. It is a great podcast, and this seems rad. Nate Hofman has a really interesting read, I think, on the popularity of the organic food movement, and that is related to control, that it is possible that consumers feel a certain amount of control over their food items if they are labeled as organic or local, because it means that, they have been sort of untampered with. And RPGgrenade actually wrote a really great comment that ends in similar territory, talking about conspiracy theorists, this idea that the involvement of government organizations and large businesses, agribusiness, is in some way has secret plans for us that are enacted through our food. And most conspiracy theorists are shown to have feelings of a lack of control, that they don't feel social or political power, and that they feel powerless, and that they don't have control over their own lives. And so I see these two things as being not not completely isomorphic, but definitely related. So yeah, these are a great sort of accidental pair of comments. Relatedly, Amor Sciendi, whose videos are great and you should be watching them, writes a comment about mechanization, which I think you could argue is another form or source of control, in that we like to think of our food as being natural. And here we can sort of address the many comments that talked about the natural bias, or the naturalistic fallacy, that things which are natural are better. And I think that this idea of mechanization finding its way into our food and somehow changing it for the worse is another example of this natural bias. Jasmine Shah, who is an organic farmer, brings up another part of this conversation that factors really heavily, which is the environmental toll that non-organic farming has on the planet. And it is, she talks about how the processes of organic farming are centered around reuse and sustainability, which are all super duper important. But then, like we were talking about, the comments at the beginning of this video, talks about how it's important to figure out how to make this movement and group of processes one that is available to all people, because this is something that, if this is good for the planet, this is a thing that arguably anybody who eats food deserves to be able to get food this way, at the very least, right? And you owe it to the planet. But yeah. Thank you, Jasmine. This is Americlaiming is great, and I promise that I will both use it and not claim that America invented it. I wonder if there's some kind of inverse or corollary to the Wadsworth constant, which states that every video there will be a certain number of people, or at least one person, who watches only the first third and decides that the video is completely worthless. I don't know. No problem, YouTube account. But seriously, this is a thing we're going to try to start doing more of. For anybody who hasn't checked it out, if you go to footnotes.pbsideachannel.com, you'll find some research sources. The idea is that as we make more videos that have or include more sources, whether or not they are actually available or behind a paywall, which is a whole other thing that I'm trying to solve. I'm trying to work really hard to figure out how I can get you guys access to the paywalled or restricted sources that we use on Idea Channel. I feel like that's going to be a big problem. It's going to take a while to solve, but we're trying to solve it. But whatever, regardless of whether or not they are actually available, we're going to try to put sources up on the Footnotes website. And if you like it, and if it continues to work over the next sort of 6 months or so, we're going to try to go back and do the back catalog, so that there will also be a kind of a back-end research resource for you to use just for pleasure if you're building syllabizes, I think is actually how it's pronounced. Yeah, it'll be some heavy lifting, but I think it's going to be really good. We'll see.